In this episode of the Asia InsurTech podcast, we dive into some of the challenges and opportunities facing the insurance industry with Julien Condamines, a co-founder and chief strategy officer at Novo AI. Julien believes there is an urgent need for change, and he highlights the growing gap between claims payments and premiums driven by operational inefficiencies, healthcare inflation, and many other factors. He also believes that legacy technology, particularly in claims processing, is creating operational bottlenecks and holding insurance back from achieving higher productivity and profitability. My name is Michael Waits, and I'm the host of the Asia InsurTech podcast. Let's bring in Julien and get the conversation going. Hey, Julien, thanks for coming and doing this. I really appreciate your time today. It's great to have you here. Let's do this. Let's start with your impression of the current state or status of the insurance industry.
Sure. Thanks, Michael, for having me. So can I start by dropping maybe 4 uncomfortable truths about the industry?
Sure. Discomfort is one of my favorite things. Go ahead.
So I've been spending quite some time talking to people in the industry and trying to build a solution around it, right? And some of the stuff that we've seen there with my co-founder is, the first thing is the industry is on a course towards hitting a meteorite. It's running toward a crisis that has already kind of started. But basically, you have an industry where claims payments are increasing much faster than premiums, which means they have to pay to their client much more and increasingly more and more than what they can charge them for, right? So
Got it.
if you look at the claims payment, they're surging by 20%, even more than that in Asia.
Wow.
And so that makes the loss ratio increase by 14%. And in the meantime, the industry is growing, but not that fast, not nearly as fast. The other thing, and that's actually part of the problem, right? Those truths are obviously linked one to another, but the state of the technology in the insurance industry is absolutely scary. I've spent some time sitting down with people doing the job, and those people are courageous even to show up at work. They use tools and interfaces, and that's kind of across the board. I haven't seen, if you take out the new players, the new digital insurance stuff, all the insurance traditional players, they use tools that looks like the internet in the 90s. Remember that first blog you put up?
Yeah,
that looked more modern. They're basically using the MySpace of software. That's
I was
really
going to say Microsoft front page.
Yeah. And so the problem with that is that, first, they've been losing some of their workforce, right? The labor costs are increasing, so they're skimming off the number of people working there. But the productivity of those tools is not increasing. To the contrary, because those tools are getting older and older, and because the level of expectation is higher and higher, that's actually accelerating the crisis, or at least the getting to the crisis, right? So all tools, all software in an industry that's losing more and more money and will soon be not profitable at all. Some of them are already there. The issue in all this is not even the technology, it's the people. Because you have people that are shying away from this digital transformation, that are just too scared to kind of like change things or go for a real revamping of the technology stacks, it keeps getting older and older, and so it's becoming harder and harder to change it. But people are getting more and more reluctant to change it because, and we've heard that from a board member of one of the largest insurance industry, won't name them, but where they're so scared of changing something because it's all interconnected tools, and they're scared that if they change one, everything is gonna it's gonna be a domino effect and everything's gonna break. And so you have leaders in particular that are more and more reluctant to change those things. And at the same time, because they're not the one using those very outdated technology, they don't really feel the pain on the day-to-day basis. So they keep going for the cheaper stuff because their margins are decreasing. And the cheaper stuff is getting worse and worse. And the productivity of their people is decreasing. And people are either leaving or being fired. And that's what's going on. And the last thing is that something that's kind of like the opposite side of it that we've been hearing is, this thing that AI and automation is replacing job. It's replacing people, and so that's the big evil of our era. I'm actually a strong believer that automation and tools like AI is going to save jobs, because if you look at it, an industry that's has decreasing margin will have to fire more and more people. And the funny stuff about that is like who you're gonna fire when your margin decrease, not necessarily the one that don't cost you that much money in those, like repetitive job, like in the developing countries where the labor cost is very low. And maybe those jobs are going to change from one country to the other that even cheaper in those countries where it's increased. But the top executive who are paid millions today, they're the one whose head's going to be cut. So the one really in charge of actually transforming the industry are the first one who are going to lose their job because automation and transformation hasn't been done. So I think that's really what's happening, and like it's a very fresh look. It's probably not the most encouraging one, and it's probably scary to start off on that note.
I like it. Can we do this though? I want to run through a few of these things,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, right? Because those are some very high level things.
Yeah.
I love this idea of it's on a course towards hitting a meteorite, right? Because it's just something it feels like you can't stop.
Yeah.
But talk to me, or at least explain to people why claim payments are increasing faster than premiums, because that's an interesting thing. Did something structurally change in the way the claims get adjudicated so that those payments are actually increasing faster? Like what's making that happen?
So the short answer is inflation, but there's a longer answer, which is
Go for it.
so inflation, basically you have healthcare inflation, you have inflation in motor parts, and most of the industry have seen like the prices of the services and labor increasing. So naturally, for the same exact procedures, for the same exact medication, for the same exact car parts, you have to pay more, right? So that's increasing the stuff. But also the partners are getting wiser and wiser. And a common trend, especially in Asia, is that over medication is a real issue, over procedures. If you go to a hospital here, for instance, more likely than not, you will be advised to go for surgery you don't necessarily need. Why? Because the surgery is bringing more money to the health provider than if you just have like maybe physiotherapy, or if you have medication, or if you wait another year before you change that knee for a plastic one.
I want to get the dates right in my mind. You can see me thinking 20 years ago, okay, I went to a hospital in a little bit of an emergency in New York, right? So where the medical care should be insanely amazing. On a recommendation of someone that I know really well. And this guy was like, we've got to do a surgery on you. We've got to put this tube like in here and do all this stuff. And I just remember leaving the office thinking, that sounds so scary, but I don't think that's necessary. And at the end of the day, I didn't do it. And I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm dead serious. Like, nothing happened. I shouldn't have said dead serious. I should have just said serious. But you understand the point? Like, at the end of the day, it wasn't really necessary.
Yeah.
Nothing in my body got worse or changed. And that made me really mad, actually. Really mad. Yeah, but okay, I can see that. Let's go on to the next thing. Digital transformation. So there are two things here that are kind of in contention with each other, right? And again, I love your choice of words, that these people are just courageous just to show up at work every day. And I know the way this feels because I used to sit on a trading desk at Goldman Sachs. And when I first started there, the technology was so bad that literally every morning I'd wake up and just have to go earlier and earlier so that I could disintermediate whatever the problems were with the tech. And there were some days where I was just like, I could die here. Because if I make a mistake, it's it's financially very fragile and fatal to me. So, but that's happening to people at work every day, you're saying, right? In this story that you're telling.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's a reluctance to change. And is that bifurcated between the senior management that's reluctant to change and the people that are doing it day to day? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what we've observed. At least I can't tell you for real. Like it's not black and white, right? But one thing that we've experienced, for instance, so we're working on claims. You talk to an innovation manager that's not really hands-on, or you talk to a CEO of an insurance company, and will say like, "Oh yeah, this problem has been solved like years ago." And then you talk to the claims team, and they're like, "Actually, not really. We do the same repetitive task every day, and like sometimes they don't even realize it because they've been doing it for so long that they don't even necessarily question the process." But then you sit down with them and you're like, oh. So one conversation I had recently was, we're very happy because nowadays you have to download the claims from our website. So you have to download the PDF and handwrite it. And next quarter, one of our digital transformation project, is to actually make that form fillable online. I'm like, oh, great. Welcome to the 90s. Like,
I was gonna
like,
say,
like
I
really,
was
like
gonna
Google
say.
Form I've been there for like what, maybe 15 years already.
Yeah.
And the funny stuff is that we were like, well, you know that with the technology we have, you don't even need a form anyway. Like you could actually just automate the whole thing for your clients. And she looked at me with big eyes like that, like, oh, really? Because it's so much like head in the steer wheel every day
Yeah.
that they're just seeing incremental changes, but also they don't really have a lot of a push from the top leadership. If it like, don't change it if it works really,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
kind of works. Doesn't work well, but it's also like they don't really see how much better it could be for lack of knowing what's out there, and also for being encouraged to actually question the status quo. And
I got
because
it.
most of the time the people in the trenches don't really have the kind of influence that would allow them to actually change those tools and software and processes and all that, right? But then the
Yeah.
people who are actually like, who sign the checkbooks, don't really understand the pain points because they're not there. Like they haven't been done to looking at what it looks like processing claims every day. And so they're like, oh yeah, we have OCR, everything's automated. And you look at it as like, it's kind of like 60% is kind of automated, and not very well with that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
You're just reminding me of when I was sitting on that trading desk at Goldman Sachs when I first arrived, and I would talk to the partner actually who was running the equity division, and I would tell him this stuff like, you don't know how much risk you're taking here with this system that we've set up, that's been set up here. And he'd be like, I don't know, it's never had a problem. No one's ever died. We've never lost any money because of it. And I'm like, yeah, but this business is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's taxing the system every single day. And he was like, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, just like you're saying. Okay.
But at the same time, they still have a
Go ahead.
complaint. So if I may, like they have, so the leadership will be like, oh yeah, but I'm not getting the loss ratio report that I want. And those reports are kind of like patchy, and I'm not getting like the right information. And so they're complaining about it. And it takes more and more time to do them. And they're like, why? I used to have this report monthly and now I have it quarterly, and it's not even that good. And the reason is, like, first, you have less people to run it. It's excruciatingly hard to get those reports from those platforms. The platform is not the same across the region. So you have different tools running in Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, and all that. And so you're like, yeah, of course your report is crap, because the data that goes into it is crap. The tool that generates the report is crap. And then you have someone that needs to spend hours kind of like, sewing all those things together to try and make it look consistent and share that with you. But
yeah, it just
but
gets
because you're
harder
not
and
looking
harder.
under the carpet, you don't know any of that.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk a little bit specifically about Novo AI. I love the name of the company, by the way. Talk to me about the origins of this company, and then talk to me about like where it is and where it's going.
Well, that's a broad question, but
Yeah.
the very origin of the company was created a few years back, but basically started focusing on prompt engineering really recently, and that's where it's interesting. So my co-founder Gilbert is a former AI engineer from Google, who decided to take the leap of faith to become an entrepreneur. My story is quite similar, although it was a few years before. I was at Google as well, and so that's how we've known each other through our alumni network. We never worked in the same place, but we've known each other for quite a few years. And I was working on digital transformation. And one of my clients was an insurance client, and we realized that there was kind of like this big problem in the way they were processing claims. They were spending so much manual time on that. It was inaccurate. The productivity wasn't great. Every time there was a seasonality peak, it would take like them weeks to actually process those claims and all that. And I was working with the exco on a kind of like high level mission, strategic mission at the time of April. And it was kind of like one of the items at the bottom of the list. And I was like, hey, this thing actually, like, like we could do something really cool, like if we use like those new technology like Gen AI. And they were like, don't really see it. No, that's not a priority. Let's get nice, but let's move back to the top of the list. And I was frustrated, so I called Gilbert and I was like, hey, I think we're onto something here. There's a case that's really ripe there for using some of your expertise. Let's work together and create kind of like a prototype very quickly together. We already had an NDA in place with the company. I asked them to share one of their most complex insurance policy with us so that we could.
Oh, wow.
And kind of like, share it with me and don't ask too many questions because I might not have anything for you. And then we worked for a few days with Gilbert. I brought kind of like the insight from the industry. He brought his expertise. And a few days back, we came up with, at the beginning, it was a chatbot that would kind of like tap into the data that would be in the policy and kind of like provide answers for whoever was asking them. So it could be internal user,
Yeah.
it could be external user. And we tested it with the best question we could come up with, but then we were not that much of experts at the time. And so we asked the leadership of April, and specifically their CEO and their CFO. We're like, all right, you've been in the industry forever. Start with simple question and then increase the level of complexity until you break that prototype. And by the way, you're going to break it very fast because we've done it in 3 days, right? And they went there, and like out of 10 questions, I think 7 of them were actually quite accurate. And they're like, oh, that's good. We didn't realize that we could have this kind of level of accuracy and this kind of like really good results with that. Now we're interested. Let's explore this further. But actually, the way we process claim is actually more interesting than actually looking into those policies and answering clients. We have way bigger problem than that, and so we started working on how we could help them process the claims that were coming from clients and hospitals alike.
So talk to me about this, right? So the two of you left your jobs at Google, though, yeah, to do this?
No. So I'd left Google. I left Google 10 years ago and worked in a few different startups, and then kind of like created a digital transformation consulting firm by accident. I joked that I was running project on the side, and then I joked that the company I created by accident hired me. That's really close to the reality, and that was quite like 8 years ago, something like that. I was in Brazil at the time. I moved back to I moved to Singapore 7 years ago. Gilbert has actually started working on prompt engineering a few years back. And so I brought that case, and we started working as a kind of like a consulting mission where it would be a tech provider for my company. And then when we saw this thing had legs, we were like, okay, let's join forces and let's actually create a real product out of it, and let's start talking about it to other companies because we think there's value beyond that sole client.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think some of the best startup companies get founded in this exact way, where like the two of you are working on something that maybe aren't related with different sort of expertise and disciplines, but you've known each other for a while. And then you see this thing happen and you're like, hey, can we just try this together like over the weekend or whatever and see if we can build this thing? And it starts to work. And then you present it to somebody. Yeah. It's a real problem that really needs to get solved, not just some like pie in the sky thing where you come up with an idea to fill some kind of market gap that you think exists. And then it just starts going. Then at some point, the two of you just look at each other, because this is exactly what happened to me in my business. And we were like, shouldn't we just do this full time kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then that's the way this happens. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's exactly what happened. And the trust was there because we had both worked at Google. We had kind of like a common work ethics as well, and a way to approach this kind of product in the same way. So don't know if that's the time, but like a funny story is that when we started working with that client, we were like, all right, what is your biggest headache there? Because we don't want to work on the small stuff. What is the biggest challenge? Because if we can solve the biggest one, then we can solve the rest, right? So exactly. And that's something we inherited from Google, Gilbert and I, and we were very aligned. We didn't even discuss it. We were like, yes, of course, this is the way to actually tackle this. And the biggest headache was claims from Thailand, because so many reasons. And we're like, okay, let's work on that. If we can solve this thing, then we know we're onto something. If not, then okay, we've got our.
Okay, so talk to me now about how you are going through this process of redefining claims and how Gen AI helps there.
Okay, so maybe I'll use this example of Thailand. The way people see claims most of the time is like, oh, I go to the GP and I submit my invoice through my app, and that gets processed, right? This is easy stuff. OCR has been existing for a long time, and this is handled pretty easily, especially if you have a computerized invoice like in Singapore most of the time. Pretty easy stuff. Now, let's say your friend, I don't want to jinx it. So let's say a friend of yours goes to Thailand and breaks their leg, right? And they have an insurance, so they go to the hospital. The hospital will call the insurance and say, like, hey, we've got this guy, broke his leg. And the insurance will sell a letter of guarantee saying like, yeah, sure, up to that much amount will cover for the damage. Go and do your best. What happens next is a series of documents that start piling up. Some of those are like, okay, you'll have an X-ray, you'll see a GP, you'll see a specialist, you'll have some sort of medication. Maybe you'll have to spend a few days at the hospital. So you have a hospital, like what they call an inpatient bill. And so all of those end up being like very different documents with bits and pieces of the diagnosis, bits of pieces of the medication. And then in the middle of those, you've got a bill with a lot of items in them. Those documents are sent as bad quality scans to the insurance company in no particular order. No two hospitals have the same template. And within those documents, again, going back to Thailand, because it's a very representative case, you have some of the documents in Thai, some of the document in English, some of the documents in both languages. You have a stamp to notify the date where the patient was admitted. You have some manual annotations on some of the documents. You have some of the documents will use the Buddhist calendar. This is my favorite one. We discovered that some were using the Buddhist calendar, which is completely different from the one that we use, but not all of the documents. You'll have documents that have absolutely nothing to do with this case. So usually a lot of the time, the first page is a list of patients that they've seen this month. So it's not even related to the case. And so you have someone on the other side that receives this stack of paper in no particular order, and of course they never come in the same order, with no explanation whatsoever, and receive this scan and has to capture this data into a system. Remember the state of the system. So a very old interface that's kind of clunky. Look at every single document one by one, capture all those data as fast as they can because someone is expecting to be paid very quickly on the other side.
Yeah.
And then has to create a case in the system that the insurance company is using. And then this case is opened by another team who will review the case, study it, and decide whether this should be paid, not, or if there should be like some sort of follow-up because some documents are missing, or if the hospital has done some sort of like weird stuff and there should be some sort of negotiation on the cost, or if they just don't understand the claim and they should talk about it.
Right.
And so this is an incredibly manual process. This is highly inaccurate. It's boring as hell to do that. So you can imagine that people are not necessarily, and they're not paid enough to actually care for doing the right thing.
Tedium.
And so it takes a longer time. And among that, sometimes you have a seasonality peak. So all of a sudden you have 1,000 claims that are arriving at the same time because it's holiday. And so all of a sudden you have a lot of claims coming in and a huge backlog. And then those claims have different level of complexity. So between someone that went to the GP and someone that broke their legs and had complications and had to have a surgery and maybe that touched their back and so on and so forth, you need different level of seniority of reviewers as well. So you have to study it more and all that. So all of these things adds up and deteriorates the experience of the user on the other side, the policyholder, but also the relationship between the hospital and the insurance, because the hospital wants to get paid and doesn't really like the negotiation.
Right.
And so we looked at that and we're like, oh, there has to be a better way to do that, right? It's impossible that we can't do that in a different way. And so what we started to do is like looking at really every single point of friction of this process, spending time with the actual team and saying, okay, how are we going to improve that process and how can we make it like much better? The way we approach it was we offered two options to the company we started working with April. We're like, we have two ways to go at it. The first one is we work in a vacuum and we come back in 3 months and we give you a solution that's not going to work very well. And then we'll have to work on that. The second option, if you're flexible enough, and since you trust us already, we build something very quickly in 2 weeks. We bring it to you. It's gonna suck. It's not gonna be good.
Right.
And you give us your pickiest, most senior reviewers, and you get them to try and break it as much as you can. And we'll do that weekly until the point where you tell us this is good enough and you want to use it, right? And with that, in 3 months, we guarantee you will have something that's the Tesla of the claim processing, right? And they were like, okay, we'll go for option 2. That sounds better. And we started working with them. And so on the way, we realized the first part that I told you about, like those guys capturing the thing and creating in the system, that's something we discovered on the way we didn't know at the beginning. And so we looked at every single point of friction up to the point where we got to this solution where we get the claims in those bad shaped scan. We capture them with OCR. So that's been existing for 10 years. But what wasn't possible before was actually making sense of this data. And what Gen AI is doing in there is like it reads the data the same as a human would, but with much better memory. So every time it reads data, it kind of like it remembers it, right? And so it's capable of not only reading the document, making sense of them, but actually understand the context and make sense of the entire context of the whole set of documents. And so it's capable as well of recouping missing information, finding inconsistencies and all that. And so what we do now, we have an interface that on one side gathers all the documents from the claim, and on the other side, organize those information. So we have one part which is the claimant's information, date of birth, name, policy number, blah, blah, blah. health provider information, so the name of the hospital, the doctors that attended the patient, and so on and so forth. And then gets to the fun stuff, so itemizing every single line of the invoice, which they usually don't have the time to do it. And then we get into the very interesting stuff, which is a summary of the entire claim. So summarizing what happened to this claimant and what is the diagnosis. And now what we're able to do as well is actually applying the international code from the World Health Organization. So if you're from the US, right? So in the US, you have actually people paid to codify those claims and to say, this is a diagnosis. And we're talking about the database with 70,000 codes. So people have actually certification to do that, and they paid quite high to do that. And if the hospitals don't code their claim, they're not getting paid. In Asia, that's hardly used at all, and it's really badly done. And so what we're capable of doing is actually automating this codification. And then we're able also to map every single line item to the coverage and the cover cause in the policy of the claimant. So we're capable of telling the insurance company basically, this is what the claim is about. This is the diagnosis. Based on the diagnosis, this is what happened during his time at the hospital. This is what it refers to in your jargon and in the insurance policy. And now we're going to the next step, which is, by the way, this is weird. Why? Because of this diagnosis, why was this medication applied? Why was the surgery done to someone that just twisted their ankle? Why was this guy getting given an ergonomic pillow when he just had a broken leg? And so we're capable of identifying over-medication, unnecessary procedures, and basically what we call fraud and abuse or waste of unnecessary resources. So and all of that in a fraction of the time that it was used for the insurance company originally, because it's not instant, but it takes a few minutes to do that for a batch of like thousands of claims. With a higher level of accuracy than humans in a very consistent way. And providing a set of information that humans were not capable of providing before.
Julien, in my head, right, I keep thinking about one thing that you said earlier at the beginning of this conversation, that no two hospitals have the same documents, right? And also no two insurance companies have the same documents. And I think in the old days, if you were building a tech company that was going to do digital transformation for both sides of this, one would have thought, let's just standardize the documents and then make that communication easier. But it seems to me like what Gen AI has allowed and the tech you've built has allowed is like, I don't care what documents you have on either side of this thing, because I know what your documents look like and I know what the hospital docs look like. And even if they're completely disjointed and it seems like there's no connection, I can hire like the smartest person in the world, which happens to be that Gen AI, have them go through all of it really quickly, put it into a format that your system already uses, regardless of what your system is, and then do all these summaries that it would take a human like 15 days to do. Yep. And even can look for missing things. Like you talked about this certification for these 70,000 categorizations. You just go, you're missing this thing. And even maybe have a chatbot that sends it back to that person and says, isn't it this code that should be here? If it is, click yes, we'll just fill it in and then the document is done. Like it's just changed the way you look at this building tech, right? And that seems super cool to me, no?
And you're right, like the way OCR company have been working on it and the way it's possible to do in the US and in Europe where regulation has actually imposed some standard, yep, is using a template, and then you take the OCR and then you put some sort of rule-based automation where you say like, on the right-hand corner, you're going to have the name of the hospital. So capture that and put it in this box. But you need a large volume of document that looks the same to be able to do that. And when in Asia, not even the same hospital is sending twice the same documents and in the same order.
In the same order,
it's just not possible to do it. So you kind of have to find a new way, and that wasn't possible until like a year back, right? And now the models have increased so much and so fast that we're able to do that with very, very small set of documents. We're already capable of like capturing most of the information.
That is super cool. Do you want to talk about any success stories or any results that you've had in using this technology and implementing it?
Yeah, so the best case is April, right? The first client we work with, because now they've deployed it regionally and that's their default solution now. And so from the story that I was telling, like we worked with them and eventually like, in 3 months we got to a level of accuracy that was good. The next 3 months we fine-tuned it and we worked on the exception. And after 6 months, I remember having this call. It was a bit of a aha moment for me. Like I think I'll remember that. And we had the head of operation, Mary, which is a fantastic person. She's worked in the industry for 20 years. She knows everything inside out. And she was like, okay, I want this thing. And then we had the guy from the IT, Thomas, who's not the most easiest person to work with because he's got way too much work. He's the smartest guy, but he's got too much work and all that. And he was like, yeah, this is working for me. And so we had the two most important person in the room saying like, we want this. I'm like, okay, so I can go back to the CEO that we know, Romain's amazing guy as well. Like, I can go back to Romain and tell him like, you guys want this. They're like, yes, please. We want this to be running because this is making our life easier and it's bringing better results, right? And so they measured the impact on that. And so that helped them gain 70% in terms of productivity. The accuracy is better than what their human teams were doing. And so when I say 70% of productivity, that means 7 people in a team of 10 has been reallocated in doing smarter stuff, right? So working on cases that actually require attention, because you don't want those guys to work on claims that are very low, not much interest, that even though they're not paid that much, at the end of the day, if you make them spend time on very low value claims, that's not making any sense. So every time we can flag that the claim is suspicious, you get them to actually spend time on those claims. And so they multiply their value.
Sorry, I want to go back to this because you said this earlier too, and this is something that I believe in very strongly, right? Because I've seen multiple cycles of this where new technology gets introduced and everybody's like, their hair's on fire about everyone's going to get fired because the productivity gains over here are going to make these other people that were doing that job just useless and unnecessary. And I want you to talk about this a little bit more because I love this idea that 70% more productive doesn't mean you can get rid of those 7 people. It means that those people now get to focus on things that are super more important and actually for them way more interesting to do. So they're actually more motivated. They become better employees. This is a huge win for everybody, no?
And yes, absolutely. So, but then it requires a bit of a change of mindset in the industry. So I want to be very clear. Some of those people will lose their job because
of course
the leaders are not capable of upskilling them. But that's where, again, GenAI is coming with the good news, is that the boat you were talking earlier exists, and that's something we're working with Discover Market. That's one of the embedded insurance based in Singapore, where we want to create this boat so that the internal teams can talk with it. And so what I was describing before, you have access to very complex policy, pages long, with a lot of exceptions and all that. And all of a sudden, you have a boat that can actually pick information into that and say like, yes, this is the answer. And provide a consistent answer every single time, and telling people that are not necessarily yet senior what the right answer is and how they can work with that. So even though you have people that are not necessarily the most qualified at this moment, you can use this thing to actually upskill them and get them to the next level of their career.
Yeah, I love this idea of having a bot that's used internally, not for external communications, but for internal. So people can be like, this is a 400-page document. How am I ever going to be able to find the 3 pieces of information that I need, right? But the Gen AI bot can go do that because it can read that thing in 4 seconds and give you the answer right away. And we've seen examples of this actually on the trading desk, 15 years ago, the way we used artificial intelligence to be able to give us information about stocks and stock prices and positions and stuff like that. And the same thing's happening here. I love this idea.
And because we're flagging the document they should spend time on for them, then it's easier as well, because then they just have to look into the case that are worth more attention, right?
Yeah. So let's move on to another topic, and then we'll get to the end of this, right? I feel like there's a move going on in InsurTech, right? From digital distribution, which is what I was talking about 4 or 5 years ago. Everybody was trying to figure out how do we use platforms? How do we do all this other stuff to digitally distribute the product? From now looking actually internally to operational optimization. Do you want to talk a little bit about this as well?
I don't know that this is actually happening. I agree with the first part of what you said, which is if you look at InsurTech in the last few years and the funding specifically, most of it has come from funds that are fueled by large insurance, and some of them don't have operation in the region. So it's kind of like, or they have operation, but they don't want to disrupt their agent network and all that. So they invest in new digital players that will distribute their product for them. And so that give them a foothold in Philippines, in Thailand, in Indonesia, where they don't really know how the market operates. And so they can gather data and understand the market better. But that's what's been happening, right? So you've had a lot of distribution company, like online insurance or embedded insurance. That's most of the players that appear. But very few actual solution improving the operation or tackling fraud and all that. And those are still in the hands of very, I wouldn't say old, but like kind of like very traditional IT services and consulting company that have been like kind of like kind of like the software developers that have also aged, right? And those are the ones who have built those interfaces. And so GenAI has seen like a lot more new solutions, but you see a lot more in the US. For instance, you've got a wave of those there. In Asia, it's still very nascent. We haven't seen that many people actually doing this. I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure we don't know everyone yet. But you have the OCR players that are starting to kind of like stack up on GenAI, but they kind of have to change the legacy system. New solutions are still like lagging a little bit, and also because this is an industry that's incredibly hard to penetrate, right? And that's been in the hands of like large consulting firms, whether IT or like management consulting, and so not everyone has an interest of seeing that change, right? So that's kind of like what I wouldn't say fighting against, but that's where we're doing a bit of evangelization and trying to show that there's a brighter way to do it.
Okay, so if you were going to go out and talk to industry leaders and tell them why they should work with Novo AI, what would you tell them, and how would that message sound?
So I think one common misunderstanding is that digital transformation is one big mountain that you have to climb at once. And I think the huge leap that GenAI is allowing those companies to do is actually we're able to work with very old legacy systems. All we need is an API connection or even like a server drop. And like even those old companies that have like very old system, they're able to do that. And we can even, the output could be like a simple CSV, right? So it's very, very easy. So I think, and large tech companies, the Google and the likes have proven that for the last 10, 20 years, that you can actually innovate through iteration. And so I think that's the message that I want to convey to those top leaders, that we can actually start small, start reaping the benefits of GenAI on maybe not the gigantic projects. So maybe start with claim processing. Claim processing is not actually where the biggest hemorrhage is coming from. If we talk about fraud detection and abuse, that's an even much bigger case for like for the in terms of expenses for those companies. But we can start small, start getting the value, start getting them used to what GenAI can do. Use that to actually train their team internally. There's a lot of teams that are still not really up to speed to that. I'm talking about compliance, legal, who are just afraid of like buzzword that you see in the news, like hallucination and the likes. But no, you can start with small project, provide very tangible value very, very quickly, and start helping them to actually regain the margin, but also go a bit further as well, allow them to actually regain their position as a guardian angel of their policyholders. Right now, the industry is being seen as a necessary evil that kind of like charge them to pay the bill when it's too big. But there's a way to do better insurance than that, and that starts by improving the way you operate. And I think we're one of the many ways to get there.
Got it. Okay. Julien Condamines, a co-founder and chief strategy officer of Novo AI. That was awesome. You've got to come back. This was really a great conversation. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Well, be careful what you wish for. I'll come back next week if you insist. Thank you so much for having me, Michael. That's super interesting and helps me reflect as well on the discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you.